Like you could be the
I
second princess I've been around in a week, right? Like
I don't know. I
you
mean,
got a tiara.
but it's in a box at home.
All
Like
right.
I don't wear it anymore. That's the thing. But I guess like
Never. Like you don't pull it out and try it.
no,
No,
not anymore. Not
I
too
would.
often.
I-
You
But
have a bad day, you don't pull it out.
you know, that's one thing that like every once in a while, if I've got like a gala to go to or something, I'll just like be like, this is a nice reminder. But then it's
Yeah.
also like fun on the engineering days before like a big presentation too, that I'll be like, all right, I'm gonna go present to a bunch of site VPs or whatever it is, and that'll be sort of the empowerment moment, maybe.
So Grace Stanke,
Yeah, as bad as it looks.
as tough it is to grow up with that name, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. I mean,
yeah,
it's
you've
not
heard
bad.
it
I
all?
really don't care. Yeah,
Grace
I've
is
heard
a
it
good
all.
one. You got a good one on the front side anyway.
Yeah, well, and it's changing in a couple months anyway, so
Okay,
it's fine.
That's it. You get rid of it.
Yeah.
So Grace Stanke is a nuclear engineer and clean energy advocate who gained national recognition as Miss America.
Yes.
That's your ChatGPT intro sentence.
Is it actually?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
This is not
interesting.
sponsored by ChatGPT, but like
Yeah.
I am I've never done intros. So most of my shows before
Yeah.
this season, nobody has any idea who I'm talking to.
Uh-huh.
Right? Like it's just like I just
So
start
just go for
talking.
ChatGPT though and
But
see
now
what
I'm
happens.
testing the ChatGPT and it writes really
I was
nice
gonna say.
first sentences. You should
All
see
right.
you should see some of them. When we built the David Noble show, someone said, "Well, what are you going to do?" And I was like, "Well, it's going to be as ridiculously varied as I am." Right?
I
And
love that.
so,
I love that. That
you
brings
know,
me joy.
So, like, how are you going to grow? I'm like, I'm probably not going to grow. And they're like, well, how are you going to get guests? I was like, I'm going to be
You
interesting to people and ask them. And so you are definitely the first Miss America
Okay.
and first Miss America contestant on
All
the
right.
David Noble show.
Well, maybe
So
not
congratulations.
the last. Thanks.
But I have had a Peabody Award winner. And what is the one for Broadway? The
Is it Tony?
Tony
Is that
Award
what it
winner.
is? I was gonna say, I
Yes.
think it's Tony Award.
Tony
Yeah.
Award winner.
Awesome.
Are
All right.
you familiar with the Gilmore Girls?
I'm not,
Oh,
unfortunately. I
well,
should be.
You should be. Absolutely. So welcome to the David Noble Show.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
You're more than just a clean energy advocate. You're also an employee at Constellation Energy.
Yeah, so I do like advocacy work in a way, where I work on public policy stuff or creating social media content in my free time, all sorts of things like that. But then the engineering side is really fun too, because I get to like do the hands-on work of helping Constellation's nuclear power plants, specifically pressurized water reactors. We're not going to get too into the weeds on like nuclear power plant tech, but
Well, if you want to.
I mean,
Again,
if you want to, we
nobody's-
can, but
oh,
no,
you know,
it's okay.
yeah.
But then on that side, I help with maintaining the operating fleet, but then in addition to that, now helping with the restart of a nuclear power plant.
Yes. Which one?
So 3 Mile Island Unit 1 is being brought back online as the Crane Clean Energy Center. So like I just went through, so I'm revising a bunch of procedures or reviving a bunch of procedures because this was a unit that was shut down in 2019. Now it's coming back online that as Crane Clean Energy Center. And it's fun because like I just had to go through and be like, all right, so it's just Crane now, right? Like that's Chris Crane, that's it, right? Period. That's it. So it's fun. It's fun.
So bringing back a nuclear energy reactor.
Yeah.
That's not.
Yeah, dude.
That's a lot of words.
No, it's just another day, you know? It's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah. Another day in the life of Miss America.
Another day. It's
Did they
fine.
give you a cape too when you?
Oh my gosh.
Like,
I
like
think
a
we
super,
could do that.
you know, like
I think we could
Superman
do that.
has a cape. Like you should, you know, I think that's potentially somewhere to go. So I think really easy off the top and front, like why is nuclear clean energy? I think people would be like, what?
Yeah, so
You know, the
yeah.
average person.
as why nuclear is clean, it's emissions-free energy at the end of the day, right? When it's creating electricity, there's no carbon emissions coming out. When you see those cooling towers, which is what most people think of when they think of a nuclear power plant, that's just water vapor. All those do is cool water down to go back into the power plant. So it's a ton of fun because having no experience in nuclear for me growing up, like when I first learned about nuclear energy and like engineering, I thought it was bombs and maybe like 2 nuclear reactors in the United States. I knew nothing. Now to like seeing these facilities and the amount of engineering work that goes into it, the amount of risk analysis, the amount of just integrity that's behind the doors is just incredible.
So when I was growing up, nuclear energy was simply people chaining themselves to a fence trying to stop like
Yeah.
the facility.
Mhm.
I think it was in like New Haven or something, or not New Haven, New Hampshire. There was the New Hampshire
Seabrook.
Seabrook.
Yeah, I
Yes.
was gonna say.
So there was like this huge like crazy, and I used to wonder what were they doing and why were they doing it. I'm not chaining myself to anything.
No.
Right.
Well, I
Like
mean,
so
yeah, it's nice to be able to go and do things, right?
right. And so, but I mean, I think what's interesting is the way I'm going to say the way people that are educated in energy look at nuclear today versus the way it was talked about in the 1980s and 1990s
Yeah.
is an entirely different question,
Yeah.
right? Or entirely different branding.
Yeah. No, it's so interesting because so a lot of the like public perception work that I do when I'm educating people ranging from like kindergarten classrooms to politicians to international trips, like anything and everything, the people who I don't have to convince are my generation, really. Young people are the ones who actually is the most supportive generation of nuclear as of that are living right now. And it's been interesting because like I did this international tour in Australia at the beginning of this year
I
where
saw that on the
yeah, so
internet when I
yeah.
was doing my
Oh,
research.
oh,
Yeah.
ChatGPT helped out with that.
No, that was I think it was Instagram that did that
Oh, that
one.
could be it too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I multiple internet-based
Yeah.
research, and I get like a little bio. And
Yeah.
everything.
See, but that's the interesting thing here is you bring up a good point because I think that that is the exact reason why young people are a little bit more supportive of nuclear than previous generations because we have this access to information to look at both sides, you know, and especially for me, like growing up in this world of fake news, growing up in this world of okay, always check your sources, always check the other side to form my own opinion. I think that's exactly what's happening with nuclear energy too, is people just aren't hearing or believing the first thing they hear. They're going through and making sure they hear all sides of the argument before moving forward. Plus, the existential dread and of crisis of climate change for young people, because that's super fun.
Yeah, I
right?
haven't figured out how they got so worried, but
Yeah.
there's so many things to worry about. But at the same time, like you need energy. So
Mhm.
I've been thinking about and working in energy since 1999.
Yeah. That's awesome.
That's 25
Older
years.
than me.
Yeah. I have not done any actual work in many years, right? But I was part of the deregulation side coming into the early 2000s, and then cleanup. I had to clean up all the financial mess
Mm.
in that.
Okay.
So as a lawyer. And so I got to play in different areas and see different things like distribution. There's so many complications in the energy world. And I said this recently, like in 2000, that was such a boring place to be. It was like, oh, how do you get like 0.5%, 50 bips raised on the price according to the regulatory body?
Mhm.
And today, when I think about from technological innovation component, like this is an exciting place to be, is in energy.
Yeah, I mean, so many people that I know went into engineering to work on wind or to work on solar energy or to work on nuclear energy, to work specifically on one type of energy that they have found their passion for, which is so cool because not only are kids going into energy, they are passionate about their specific kind. And then you've got people that are interested in the whole energy spectrum too, where, okay, now how does this all fit together in the United States, which is just like so awesome to see that. So
Yeah.
I have a question for you then.
Oh,
What would you, from your work experience back then, what is the one thing that you wanted to go away that was hindering progress?
so politically, I'm a market-based. I
Mhm.
have a market-based belief, and much of the regulatory process is counter to the market,
Mhm.
which, in my opinion, often hinders the ability to advance with innovation.
Okay.
So that was something that we were looking at, and I wrote this wonderfully intellectual law review article talking about it. And then, like, basically what happened was I was totally wrong on the execution, and Enron happened, and like a
Mhm.
lot of these different things where financially it just blew up in our faces at the time. I think when I saw that, I really became interested in the problems in the distribution component because there's energy being made here and it can't get to here.
Yeah.
And like, how do we do that? And that has huge, massive,
Mm-hmm.
and so I was working around the time that California had some major problems between its northern and southern grid. And there was arbitrage going on and all these things and some funny business. And I just always thought, like, how can we not build a system where there's equitable distribution of energy?
Would you
Like,
want like a super grid? Like everything in
I
America
don't
is
know the
connected?
right
I'm just
technical,
curious.
I don't know the right technical answer to this. And I think that's where I think the idea of a super grid wasn't even feasible when I was thinking about it in that way.
Mhm.
I don't think there was, you still, I don't know if they still have power plants in New York City or not, but like if you go like they're there physically, right, around because you couldn't get enough energy in New York City at all.
Yeah.
And so like those were some of the more interesting problems that we were dealing with was the economic side of this. And, from climate change through, um, through the technical revolution that's happening today at the research level,
Mm-hmm.
finding that gap right now is the most interesting piece. And I think it's partially why I'm so committed to the work we're doing with Constellation and talking to you today is like, well, nuclear is about the only logical answer that I can find that bridges the gap between today and 2060.
Yeah.
I don't know how you have energy.
I don't disagree. I mean, you're
You know,
preaching to the choir there in that moment, but
and so I find that fascinating.
yeah.
And then you see things like what Germany goes through politically, and they're like refuse to turn their reactors back on.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, and that conversation is still ongoing, which is so like global politics and how you have countries that are so like economically similar or politically similar, but then have such varying levels of advancement in nuclear is so interesting to me. And like this is one thing that I've been really kind of diving into. So like little backstory, I'm getting my MBA right now and I'm going to do like an emphasis on international studies, so super fun stuff. But it's interesting to me to compare like okay, the United States, which has the largest nuclear fleet in the world, right? In terms of megawatts produced, it's the largest nuclear producer in comparison to some of these other nations that are still advanced. They've got the finances, they've got everything there. And then you've got countries like Germany that just like shut everything down. And now they're like, wait, but should we turn them back on? And now it's like, oh, well, I don't really know, And now it's this like waffling game where it's really interesting to see the differences there.
And to me, energy independence from the international perspective, incredibly important, right? And again, you can't have that in America without nuclear.
Yeah.
And I think Europe, I had breakfast with some energy folks this morning, traders and bankers, and one of the bankers' points was, I work at a European bank. I can't say what I think publicly.
Yeah.
Because it just doesn't fit. The
Yeah.
reality doesn't fit the narrative. And the banks are as much worried about people protesting outside as good business.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's interesting because I think, it's funny that you bring that up because I think like looking at nuclear specifically and like I'm going to take a moment here and critique this industry just because like one thing that I've noticed in my young days,
Yes,
when
you're with
my
your
youngin'
multitude
days.
of years of experience,
Yeah,
right?
back in my day, when I was 8 years older, but there wasn't as much communication from nuclear, and it wasn't necessarily willing to take a clear stance. And I think that was part of the reason why nuclear sort of had a decline. But now we're seeing this stronger communication. We're seeing a lot more education. We're seeing the access to information. And I find it interesting that you bring this up because I think there can be a parallel between like banks and then like the nuclear industry saying, hey, this is what we need. The public, yes, can oppose it, but they can also demand it. And at the end of the day, that might be what drives that necessity and actually makes it happen. especially when you're handling some of these really big challenges and big projects that need to last more than just one administration. So I think that's just like an interesting thing.
That's a whole nother ball.
Yeah,
right?
I was gonna say this
You
is
got
like
you got like
totally.
you're building 50-year assets
Yeah.
sometimes, right?
Mhm.
And that's not just administrations, but like entire careers.
Yeah, but I mean, and at the end of the day, though, is what you need to make that last is that overwhelming public demand, because that is the one uniform thing from time to time to time and time again. And it's cool because even for people like me who I had no family connections to nuclear, I didn't live near a plant, like it's something that was exciting to be a part of because it was doing the next big thing. Because that's one thing that I don't know. It feels like we get really in the weeds and we focus on, okay, how can we get the fastest turnaround or the fastest next profit or whatever it might be. But it's cool to be a part of something big that is going to not just help the people, help the world, but also be just an incredible component of society. Energy's, got great job security. I think that's safe to say, but just in terms of like big projects accomplishing big things.
What's it like to be a college student? Do you do Miss America after college? Like, do you do
So
that
you
year?
can do it during. I did it during.
Okay.
So now that I finished in 2023, January of
Yeah.
2024 is when I put the crown on the next girl's head and said, "Congrats, good luck."
Okay. And then graduated in
Yep.
May.
So yeah, well, I graduated December of 23, so I started
Oh.
working with Constellation in March of
Okay.
24. So
So
there's our
what's the
timeline.
What's the interview process like
For Miss America?
for Miss America to then go get a job?
Yeah.
Like, or as my parents said, for the 20 years that I didn't have, like, or I still, it's still debatable, a real job.
Yeah.
Like my mother's still not, I'm pretty sure convinced that I don't have a real job. But
Yeah.
like, what is it like for Miss America to go out and introduce
Mhm.
yourself to the industrial world and start to interview and look at career opportunities?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting because one, I was in my last year of college when I was going to compete for Miss America. So I was like going through the job hunt process pre Miss America, right? And I find it interesting comparing interviews from my time as Miss America to that sort of period of time when I was interviewing with a bunch of different companies. Because engineering job interviews, those technical interviews, you're being asked sort of similar questions and you know what to expect going into it, which was really helpful versus going to a Miss America interview. I mean, you would be doing like emotional 180s with your answers because they'd be like, "So tell me about what you did for Thanksgiving." And I'd be like, I was with my grandma in the hospital. We literally got like Quick Trip, a gas station back in Wisconsin where I grew up, Quick Trip Thanksgiving dinners, and we sat and played card games with her. And then they'd be like, "So how do we solve racism in America?" And I'm like, how do we go from being with my grandma on Thanksgiving to that? Like, what? So honestly, like, I think when it comes down to it, I would honestly rate like Miss America competition interviews typically harder than my engineering job interviews that I went through. And now from here
Because
on
of the
out,
range.
yeah, the range. I mean, you've got to be comfortable talking about yourself, first of all, which honestly, shockingly, most people are not.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's the interesting thing.
That's shocking to you?
I mean, not in the engineering field, but
Right.
broadly overall, most people are not comfortable saying, yeah, I'm proud of what I did. Like, yes, I'm proud of how far I've come and I've worked hard and I deserve this, right? I think there's just this sort of like perpetuated mentality in society that's let people think that they need to make themselves smaller in order to fit in. But it's okay to stand out. It's okay to believe in it and to know that you've done the work and to say that. That's just my opinion. But
What's the actual motivator in you, Grace, the person, in stepping up and taking on something like Miss America or
Mhm.
like nuclear
Yeah.
nuclear advocacy is not a small job description for
Yeah.
a 23, 24-year-old woman, right?
Yeah.
Like these are big things.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of us are afraid to put ourselves out there. So what is that psychological motivation for you? What drives you?
For me, I think one, I don't like being bored, first of all. And that's like one intrinsic thing that I've learned about myself that does drive me a lot is when I get bored, I just start to say yes to things.
Dangerous. Dangerous.
It's very dangerous. Right now I'm at the point where I'm like, I need to start saying no.
Yeah.
But then beyond that, I like to make sure that it's okay to show that people can do hard things. And this kind of comes back to that being a part of a big thing. I've always been a person to never back down from a challenge. Like I love being able to look at something hard and figure out, okay, what's the process that we can get there? Maybe there's an expected process, but maybe we can try a different route to get there. Maybe we're going to hear the word no. So what are we going to do to move around that to get to the end goal? I love that type of like problem solving and that overcoming challenge sort of aspect. And like being Miss America and a nuclear engineer was literally two of the biggest stereotypes in the world. I feel like
Yeah.
nuclear has a
And
stereotype,
like
being Miss America has a
each
stereotype.
spectrum too,
Yeah,
right?
like two
Like
totally different things.
Miss America, you're supposed to be out,
Yep.
becoming a spokesmodel, actress,
Yeah.
musician, all these things.
Uh-huh.
And a nuclear engineer, you're supposed to be a real dork.
Yeah,
right?
a little bit. I mean, those were the
yeah,
two stereotypes I was essentially like
you don't have a
combating there.
pocket protector anywhere.
I
You know what
well,
I mean?
you never. I can't say. You know. No,
But I mean, this stereotype
yeah.
component, again, it goes
Mhm.
back to the same thing of, well, why nuclear for younger people? If you were my age, you'd say, oh, that's dirty energy,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Well, facts are different.
Yeah.
What's the overlap between nuclear engineer and Miss America? Contestant. Let's call it contestant instead
Yeah,
of
no,
like
that's
actually.
okay. Yeah.
Actually becoming Miss America is like a one of one.
I think the big thing between like contestants, so every contestant has something that she's driving to do better in the world, right? Maybe it's promoting clean energy like I was. Maybe it's helping cure cancer. Maybe it's, whatever it might be. It varies from girl to girl. So everybody has that willingness to do something big for society. So I think that's one overlap directly between nuclear and Miss America contestants. And number two is doing the research and knowing the background. Like as someone in engineering, the one thing that I love and appreciate is like there are days where it's frustrating almost, but we have to go through and back up everything. Like when you have to prove somebody's wrong in nuclear, you also have to prove that you're right. Like you can't just
it's not good enough.
It goes both ways, and you're not just proving it right once, you're proving it right 6 times and pulling 6 different references to make sure that you've got that. So it's really amazing because I love that. I appreciate that so much. There's a very clear structure in terms of like, okay, we're going to talk about this task before it's performed so we know the risks, we know what we need to keep an eye out for. We have lessons learned from the last time this was done. So how are we going to improve this? Okay, now go do the task. Let's now then analyze what was done. What can we do better next time? So I find it really interesting in that aspect. Just because I think that Miss America contestants, there's a lot of like that research and that knowledge that goes into everything that they do. And that's not something that most people think of, but it really is sort of like a science in its own way. I always sucked at evening gown, right? I never got the science of how to walk pretty. Like that wasn't my thing.
Is that tough hearing that?
What?
When you get you're saying I sucked, so you have some. You're also an engineer, so you're thinking about it in terms of mathematics, I assume.
Yeah,
and
a little bit.
And like my
A little
scores
bit.
are lower here.
Yeah, I mean that was probably like if I don't know what my scores were for any of my competitions, but from feedback that I've gotten and things like that when I was competing, that was always my weakest phase of competition. And that's fine. I'm okay with that because honestly at the end of the day, I value my interview skills a lot more. I value my violin performance skills a lot more. I value my public speaking skills a lot more than walking in an evening gown, right? And that is something that, you know what, I can walk in heels down the sidewalk in New York City over a
We just
grate,
did it.
and that's enough for me. That's enough for me.
I have actor friends from growing up, and he's like, you know what it's like to get turned down for one part because your nose is too small, and the next part because your nose is too big.
Oh my gosh.
And he's like, it's just a horror. This is like a horrible way to make a living.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, part of what you're saying also too, if you tease that out, is that isn't Miss America anymore. It's a different competition than it was 25 years ago.
Yeah, so I didn't compete in swimsuit. I had a sort of like an elevator pitch portion of competition where I spoke about nuclear energy and how not just energy, nuclear science as a whole, because it's not just energy, it's medicine too. My dad's a 2-time cancer survivor, so that's something that I highlight a lot, right? And nuclear medicine helped save his life. And then going through and seeing all these different ways that you can learn the emotional 180 skills in interview, and now it makes any engineering job interview look easy. Being proud of what I've accomplished, being comfortable with talking about myself, so that way, after something like winning Miss America happens, I was having very different types of job discussions after that. And being comfortable to negotiate and know your worth, right? And to be able to understand what you bring to not just a company, but a position, and what skills that you can focus on to make yourself the biggest asset it can be. And I think that, with Constellation specifically, I've got this position of engineering because got my engineering degree, I can do the technical work, but then also this communication stuff that I love to do. I love to work with people of all different backgrounds to talk about energy, why it's important, why should we care, and how can the American people use their voice to influence that. It's not just a bill at the end of the month. You can actually do something about it to change it.
So I have to assume you had options. So why Constellation?
That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
The biggest thing that I really liked about Constellation, and this was, I didn't know anything about like the crane restart. I didn't know about any of these massive growth things that have happened in the past
Yeah.
year. So I feel like
Yeah,
that's
it's been a
important to
busy
mention.
year.
Yeah,
I
it's
think
been a really busy year for Constellation, and I didn't know any of that because this was back in 2023. None of that stuff was public. It was not revealed to me in discussions at all. The biggest thing that I appreciated about Constellation was the ability to move around in a lot of different aspects within the company. And for me, I love engineering, but if I'm being completely honest, I don't think the next 40 years of my life will be solely engineering work. And Constellation's a company where I have the opportunities to get a wider breadth of knowledge and skills. So that's one thing that I really was like, okay, I'm in on that. I'm able to get a ton of different experience, and I liked that.
And where do you go?
Where do I
Where
go?
does Grace go in life?
Oh, that's a great question, dude. I don't know.
Yeah, no. What do you think?
Oh man, right
You must
now.
have dreams and aspirations, and
Well, it's interesting how much the dreams and aspirations have sort of changed over the past couple of years. Because like Miss America, I sort of was launched into this public figure life, right? And I enjoy that in some aspects, but I also don't enjoy it in others. So like honestly, the past year, my goal was okay, have some consistency in my life again. I got a dog, got like my own apartment and everything, graduated college, like some of that stuff. But honestly,
what
right
kind of
now,
dog?
a golden retriever. His name is Captain. He's the love of my life.
All right, very nice.
But things like that are just like
I have a
short
pug.
term. Oh, you have a pug? What's his name? Her
Bob.
name? What is it?
Bob.
Bob?
Bob.
Bob?
Bob the pug.
I love that. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
That's adorable, Bob. We always talked about getting a bulldog and naming it Lunchbox. I don't know why. Like I couldn't tell
That's
you
a good
why,
name.
but
I like that name.
yeah. But yeah, no, long term, I think for me, the biggest thing is that I want to continue working on this like public perception of nuclear. And one thing that I would love to be a part of in my career, and I don't know, like I don't have a job title of how this would work out, but I would love to help bring this next fleet of nuclear power plants online. Not just starting this construction tomorrow or the day after, but seeing them through the finish within a timely manner, on budget, and handling some of these challenges that comes with deploying new nuclear.
So I don't think there are job titles that are that interesting anymore
I
in the
know,
world.
right? Everybody's got some sort
Yeah.
of fancy thing.
Yeah, you can just make those up. I mean, I think the idea is like, how do you find really meaningful work for
Yeah.
yourself, and
Understanding the why and the passion.
yeah.
Mhm.
And so for me, like, I'm not even allowed to have my job, right? Like
Mhm.
I've just spent 6 years in a job that I'm technically, like, if you look at all the requirements, like I don't have any of them.
Yeah.
But I still figured it out how to get there and how to do it. So I think that's one of the pieces. Like, I love when young people can come in to a conversation really motivated, really ambitious, and also admit, like, I don't know where I'm going, but
I think,
here's the direction,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
like I'm gonna have fun figuring it out.
Yeah, I agree with that completely because the biggest thing that I've learned is like you don't know what opportunities are going to come up if you've got this narrow mindset focused only on one strategy and way to get there. And like there are things like this past year I had like for example, I never thought I would write a book. But a book agent just sent me a DM on Instagram and was like, "Hey, like have you ever thought about this?" And I was like, no, not really, but like, let's just have a chat about it. Let me see what this is actually all involved with and like let's go from there. And that ended up turning into, me actually getting a book deal and now I'm writing a book and like stuff like that that wasn't in my little like short-term plan or anything like that. So
What's
always.
the title? Have you come up
Oh,
with it? Or
well,
you can't say?
can't say yet because it's probably going to change. I'm still in the very early parts of it right now.
All right.
But it's about like optimism in your inner circle and then moving outwards into how
Oh,
like one
wonderful.
person's optimism can impact multiple.
I'm
So,
working on a book.
oh, tell me more.
Myself.
What's your
So,
title?
well, I don't have a title yet. but
Okay, that's
the
okay, me too.
The working title is Scared.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Do it scared.
No,
Okay.
most of the leaders in the world are too scared to do anything
Mm-hmm.
at all.
Interesting. Yeah, I
And
like it.
so
Okay.
I've come up with 7 things that people are scared of.
Mm-hmm.
Rejection is one, right? People
Yep.
are just afraid of rejection. And looking at how that's impacting decision making across major institutions,
Interesting. Yeah.
because the institutions are simply people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the type of work that you're doing is interesting because, like, most people. So I'm an advocate for branding and for defining the why and sharing the why and
Yeah.
building in the open and letting people see what you're doing
Be
while you're doing
transparent
it, and the
to show the
transparency, right?
failures. Yeah.
And, yeah, and like
Honestly.
hey,
Yeah.
nothing great was created without massive failure.
Yeah.
So
That's very
like
true.
like right, it's usually built on the the 10-year overnight success
Mhm.
story. That's a much more common, realistic
Yeah.
view of life, and but we don't allow that in today's society.
You've got to be
Things
the
are judged
star child that just.
the longest time frame you have to perform is quarterly,
Mhm.
and you can't admit that you've ever made a mistake. And so I think this concept of optimism is really great. I couldn't have set this part up better where you started talking about it, because we got a little sponsor of the show,
Oh,
and
okay.
they're all about optimism.
Love to hear it.
And
Love to hear
so
it.
I have hoodies. What
Oh.
size?
Medium.
All right.
That'll be the
medium.
easiest.
We
Yeah.
we have 2. You can choose one. You can choose.
Oh.
We have the black one. I believe it's
Oh.
in which.
Oh my gosh.
Or we have this one. I can tell you from experience. I love this hoodie, but if you drink coffee like I do, it will end up with
See,
coffee.
Now
on it.
here's my thought. So 1, I don't drink coffee. But 2, the dog hair is gonna hide better on that one.
This one.
So
All right, so that's yours.
I'll
All right, that's a
swap.
good hoodie. I have that exact hoodie.
That's awesome.
And that's Find the Good brand,
Yay.
right? And Find the
Yeah.
Good brand is a Yukon startup. A former student
Oh my gosh.
has been building his company, and so it's essentially a mantra,
Mhm.
right? Like 3 simple words. That's it.
Yeah.
Find the good.
But that's all it takes too. And I think people, I'm gonna have to look into it now. Like now I'm like, okay, I'm
Well,
gonna be looking into this more. Find the good. Let's
That's
go.
the whole point of him
Uh,
giving it out.
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
well, it's working.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
working.
Yeah.
Tell them that. But I find it so interesting because that is ultimately what it is at the end of the day, is we can make the choice to find the good, or make the choice to look at the resources we have right now and move forward, because we can't go backwards. We can't fix what's gone wrong or what happened. But what we can do is find the good, and we can go through and make sure we're moving in the best direction forward. So having that direction, keeping doors open.
So the question is,
Okay, what's the question?
how do you find the good?
I want to because I want to make sure that this is not just a one-off thing in my mind, because finding the good has to come from within. One thing for me that I've learned a lot is my family unit is a really big part of how I find the good. There's gonna be days where like my brother is gonna tick me off, or my sister who lives in South Korea now, right? She sent me a happy birthday message at 1 a.m. and it set my phone off, and I'm woken up. But at the same time, she was thinking of me, and she was there, she was present. So making sure to find the good, not just from within to help the people around me, but to also rely on them to bring that good to me too. That's the biggest thing that I would say about find the good, is that if it can't come from within, I find it from the people who are close to me.
So the tagline for Find the Good, find the
Yeah.
good, it's everywhere.
I
And your
like
point
it.
is you
Yeah.
go look for it. All right. I got one last question before I
Okay.
give you the chance to say whatever you want to say. Which celebrity do you think ChatGPT says you look like?
Oh, why can't I think of her name? I've always been told the Pretty Woman actor. Julia Roberts?
Julia Roberts.
Yeah, I was gonna say
I could see that as a younger
I've been told
person.
that one. But I don't really agree with it. She's got coming back to noses. She's got a better nose than me.
So don't worry. She paid a tremendous amount for that nose. And if you go back and watch Mystic Pizza, you will see a dramatic different nose on Miss Julia Roberts than that. So do not ever take anything about noses. Yeah. I actually had a conversation with someone who is I'm doing some business with on the side, and she said to me, she had recently broke up with her long time boyfriend, and she says, the thing I liked about him the most was that he knew me with my ugly nose.
It wasn't the nose.
With my ugly nose.
There's something about noses, apparently.
Yeah. All right. So you ready for the reveal?
Yeah.
This is good.
What is it?
This is good. This is like
okay.
Margot Robbie.
Oh.
That's ChatGPT says you resemble Margot Robbie, particularly due to your tall stature, hair, and poised demeanor. These are nice. ChatGPT likes you.
Wow.
Also, it aligns with your own description yourself as a real life.
Oh, is this the Barbenheimer reference? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah.
So not only do you have 3 characteristics, Margot Robbie's good. Like you catch that. Like.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm okay with that. I'm not upset about that.
No.
She's a good person. So.
Wow. There you go. That's it. So you have to. So the part about going to the ChatGPT for a question on the show is like last time I asked it the wrong question, and it very easily could have backfired because it could have been something we already talked about. Oh, so you got to think of a question that you know that you haven't talked about.
That's okay.
So you got to do it and then go on and do it. That's that. If you end up with a podcast and you want to ask ChatGPT questions in the middle of the podcast, that's my tip.
All right, sounds good. Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming. Is there something that you want to add? Is there a question I should have asked you that I didn't, or is there I mean, you plugged out Constellation pretty nicely. You even crushed Find the Good. I
really am stoked about this. Like, that's not me like trying to be a PR person. Like, that is genuinely like I'm stoked about this.
That was like was worth the 30 hoodies that it cost, Jack. I'm sure just that one quote.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm super stoked. I would say the biggest thing, and this doesn't really tie into like any specific question, but is one thing that I've always found very powerful throughout life, my whopping, as of today, 23 years actually, of living, is that learning can never stop. You don't have to be in school to keep learning and to always be open to learning. One thing that, like, specifically within nuclears, we tend to have a lot of people that are very, very passionate about it. And like that this is, coming back to that narrow tunnel vision in a way. It's okay to like sit down and say, okay, how can we work together and collaborate? What is the next steps that we can do to make sure that we're still moving forward? So not just learning technical knowledge, but learning from other people and their perspectives too. So stay curious. Never stop learning.
You stole it. Like, the curiosity is the piece. When we built the Entrepreneurship Institute, we didn't build it to start companies. We built it to inspire curiosity in students, where we found students were coming in and being very linear. Oh, I'm going to major in finance. I'm going to get a job in investment banking.
Let me go get through and get these classes, and like, let me go through and I'll climb the corporate ladder and check the boxes, but you don't have to go through and follow that process.
And that can be redeeming if you get it exactly right on the first take. You've left yourself no room for failure, right? Yeah. And I think a curious person continues to learn and has opportunities in a nonlinear path, which can be really quite exciting and quite funny, quite fun. I know I'm preaching to the choir because you go from violin to nuclear energy to
a little bit of everything. It's like you said, there doesn't need to be a specific clear image. You can just go and do things and try things, and whatever this podcast turns into, it turns into, stuff like that.
It's been wonderfully. It's fantastic for meeting people. Yeah, it's the easiest thing, because like even Miss America like comes in and sits down with you when you have a podcast. Like, otherwise you don't do that, right?
Yeah.
And have a conversation. So. And then like 3 years from now, I'm going to get like this random text message, and it's going to be like, hey, I'm Grace. Do you remember me? And like, yeah, of course. I get it all the time.
If you don't, it's okay. I'll just send you the link to your own podcast. It's fine.
It's Grace. Do you remember me? And you're like, I'm doing this thing and like blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And like, that's where I found massive value. Yeah.
No, it's true. It's true. Well,
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much, and
Thank
welcome to the
you.
show.
Thank you.